I may or may not have some beta software.
I just shared the most life-changing
experience and nobody
ever,
heard it.
and nobody heard it. So this is a tribute. This is not the greatest conversation ever had. This is a tribute. All right.
Okay, we're back.
Okay.
Shit. And I think this is...
They're back. Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa Robertson joined, I know, a couple broadcasts ago, and that's when we had the bandwidth issue. Then I never saw her come back.
I don't blame her.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
So.
Thank you for being patient, Lisa.
Yes.
All right. Let's jump into gratitude.
Okay. There we go. Now we're recording.
Yeah. Man.
Now we're good.
Okay, I'll jump in with my gratitude first. My gratitude lately has been able to I have the ability now to be able to find peace and moments of serenity. Not all the time. I'm still a fucking complete spaz with the majority of my daily output, but you know, I'm able to sit back at times and just relax and be comfortable. It's really prevalent because this time of year, I start to think about the holidays. Mm-hmm. When I first got sober, this was one of my main, I don't want to call it a hang up, but it was sort of a concern.
Stressor.
Not really a stressor, but it was, I know I'm not alone with this, and that is when people get sober, they're like, what am I supposed to do during the holidays?
How am I supposed to celebrate?
You know,
well, they're also very stressful for a lot of people too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hold on, everyone. Check out the studio view. Hey. So, yeah. So it was always that's AD.
Yeah, right. Hey, so anyway, but hey, we also got this squirrel.
Topic is ADHD, by the way, if nobody has gotten it yet.
Yeah, we are like leaning into the theme hard.
Yeah. So, you know, it was always around.
Lead by example, right?
Halloween's coming. We know we have a Halloween party? It always revolved around some form of drinking. Celebration equals drinking.
That's what was in our head at the time. Our celebration equaled drinking and having a good time and getting drunk, and
yeah. So
for me, smoking a lot of pot.
Yeah, Thanksgiving for sure is, you know, they get up bright and early and start smoking a turkey, and it's just the festivities of it. But now, anyway, so I'm not gonna name all of the holidays, but I don't know. Now I get excited about being able to enjoy being in the moment and not having any pressures of having to do the calculus, Patrick, of, oh man, do I have to, am I on call for work? How drunk can I get? You know,
Yeah.
The holidays, so starting around Thanksgiving, I would be in a perpetual hangover until January, mid-January, all the time. And then I would, you know, taper down the drinking to a more, but it just hitting the holidays around that time, just hitting it heavy. It's nonstop celebration.
Well, yeah, we would start with the fall celebration. We'd have this big fall party, and we'd have all these people come over, and we'd drink all kinds of alcohol, and smoke copious amounts of pot, and you know have all kinds of food and stuff, and that was what we centered our basic fall around, was that one get together. Drinking
is the linchpin for us for the holidays. Well, it used to be. Now it's not. It feels really comfortable of just being able to chill and go to bed early and enjoy some friends and family.
Yeah, somewhere along the road, you know, when I was a kid, holidays were always wonderful, especially that time of year, you know. I love fall. Halloween is great, you know, when you're a kid.
Oh,
and then Thanksgiving, you get to see everybody, you get time off of school, and then you get, you know, here for us growing up, it was Christmas. So it was family and like all sorts of gifts and all bunch of stuff. Somewhere along the way, it did get conflated with drinking and everything like that. So, you know, it's been nice trying to get back to, you know, what those original feelings were before drinking, you know, obscured it or, you know, made it fuzzy. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why I think that is, especially with our topic at hand.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to celebrate the holidays for what they're meant to be celebrated for.
Yes.
You know, they're meant to be celebrated for specific reasons, not just to get hammered.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be prevalent, you know, any holiday. And I remember, you know, what's not funny or ironic, or not a strange coincidence. It just is what it is. My father, for the brief time that I knew him, he always used to say that was one of his main reasons why he had a hard time quitting drinking and doing drugs as well, is because holidays were
prevalent.
Yeah. So anyway, I have gratitude for being able to find peace and comfort and just being comfortable in my own skin around the holidays. Also, Patrick, I wrote it down on a note here. I wanted to tell you that, just humble brag, no big deal, everyone. Patrick and I ran 10 miles this morning, whatever.
10 and a half.
10.8 for me. After I left you, I ran home.
Okay.
I'm very proud of both of you guys. You guys did a great job.
Yeah, but man, thank you, babe. It was, you'll see that, you know, as we've gone through this, you get a cascade of memories for our training runs and then the half marathon. But that was probably the funnest run I've done in 3 or 4 years.
You were ready to go this morning.
I was ready. But man, it was really, really beautiful here in the Midwest. The fall colors are in full effect, and
yeah, we had fireworks this morning.
Yeah,
as far as the trees, you know,
Yeah.
And the different colors.
you get like a 2-week window when you get the full spectrum of the colors. So we had the greens, and then the reds were really starting to be like full strong before everything starts dropping.
yeah.
So and then we get on top of that, we picked a run today that just ran through a bunch of larger fields, park area set aside, and so we got to see this sunrise over that.
You guys got a beautiful sunrise.
Yep.
Yeah, but it was I found myself once again being able to be in the moment and enjoy, not think about, you know, where we're going and what's next, what's happening. So I got my whole list of ADD things I'll struggle with, but gratitude.
I am very close to your gratitude. I'm very grateful for being able to accept me for me, to look in the mirror and say, you know what, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm 52-year-old woman. I'm actually doing better than some of other 52-year-old women that I've seen on TV and you know, in pictures and stuff. And I'm okay the way I am. I'm totally fine. I'm actually really healthy, and I am grateful to now be able to look in the mirror and appreciate me for who I am.
I love that.
Yeah, you are beautiful, babe. And
Thank you.
that's been a struggle for you for a lot of your adult life.
My whole life.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I still do, but not as bad. I had really bad knock knees, and so I always thought I walked like a penguin or a duck or, you know, stork. That's what it was. But, and I was very critical about myself. I would look in the mirror and criticize instead of look in the mirror and appreciate. And that was the main issue that I was having. I was looking at all of the beautiful women in magazines and on TV, and I would just denigrate myself and downgrade myself, even though I was 5'10" and I was really thin and I was athletic and I was, you know, constantly doing sports and roller skating and all that kind of stuff. But I still saw myself as something completely different than what other people saw. And so it's nice to be able to look at myself in the mirror and think, you know what, I'm good.
Yeah. And babe, I've noticed a marked improvement in your just overall demeanor. You've got a very consistent, now look, for the record, this didn't happen overnight one day. But,
plus, I'm going through menopause, so I'm hormonal too.
Yeah. But I've noticed you having a very consistent level of joy.
It's helped that when I go to sleep, right before I go to sleep, I run through everything that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And I try to get into that space of when I was a kid and I felt complete comfort and security, and I didn't have to worry about anything. And I try to get in that space to feel those emotions and to appreciate everything I have right before I drift off to sleep. And that in itself has helped tremendously.
Love it.
It's a good cue before your brain goes on autopilot and starts playing those.
Yes, if I don't do that now, the dreams that I have are horrendous. They're just horrible.
You spent decades training your brain to try and think a certain way, so it's going to take time. But giving those cues beforehand is very important.
Yeah.
Very beneficial.
Yep. Very nice, babe.
What are you? How's your gratitude?
My gratitude lies with patience and meaning the sentiment of like learning to trust the process. Patience is one of those muscles that was always hard for me to learn because it takes patience to learn patience. Delayed gratification, right? And that sense of urgency is always run strong with addicts and those with ADHD and everything like that. Like you just want to be at the end of the race. You don't want to go through the race. You just want to get through it. And learning to just enjoy, trust the process, right? And knowing that there's this idea, Atomic Habits is a really fun book by James Clear, and he speaks of this idea of 1% better every day. Meaning like if you were to just increase 1% better every day, you have like a compounding interest of growth rather than saying like, I need to be twice as fast tomorrow, right? And so it's almost as an insignificant gain, but over the longer period of time is where that benefit comes from. And that's what I'm trying to say with patience is, in sobriety, nobody wants to come and say like, it's very scary at the beginning if you begin to think of, am I quitting drinking forever? And the focus always comes back to, old timers and, people seated in their sobriety will always remind it's one day at a time. It's the present at a time, meaning like you can only worry about now and deal with the present now. So over time you begin to learn the power of that. Like, this is like teaching yourself to rack up those victories, those bags of Reese's, like one day at a time. All of a sudden you have like 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden you have a week, then it becomes like a month, then it becomes half a year, and then like it just starts to roll. You see that compounding interest grow, and I begin to look back, and I am like thankful for that patience in the long run because of where I'm at now. No one raindrop blames itself for the flood, and I look back and I see many, many hard days that I've had. I've had very many good days, but ultimately the thread that pulls is that, patience, just learning how to deal with one day at a time has given me the gift of the multiple years that I've had so far.
That's a good one.
It is. And sort of to chime in on your point, Patrick, I get that for myself as well, but it's important for me to always give myself a little bit of grace and make sure that I'm having the perspective of that too. I take it for granted sometimes because my mind is always like, what's next? What's next? Always better. And I have to stop myself and go, hey, everything's good now.
Here's pretty cool.
Yeah, here's all right.
Cool.
But it's a pro and a con to how I work too. It's, first rule of an infantry soldier is after you get your defensive position built, what do you do? You always improve your defensive position. So I always thought that resonated with me when I learned that. And that is, I'm always doing that, right, babe? It's like I can't leave well enough alone. I'm getting better at it. I don't see it necessarily as a fault, though, sometimes either. It's like, what can we do to make it a little bit better? So, but
I think that can go either way. That can either be a fault or it can be beneficial.
Yeah, that's me. That's the paradox of John.
I think it's just a lot of our emotions, it's how we hold them. Very much we talk about the middle way in a lot of aspects. It's how we hold and attach ourselves to these sentiments, And then there's simple items of thought, like, if you're talking about always improving defensive position in just that realm, there becomes a point of, where you're not going to see a return on investment, right? So you have to recognize, or the idea of Six Sigma, right? If you aim for 80% accuracy, whatever, and you try to refine your processes, eventually every time you improve your standard deviation of your Sigma, the return on investment gets so small, right? So doing it 6 iterations, they've determined is usually the average of where you get at. My point is, that's a good practice, to continue to improve, but there becomes like a threshold of like learning to be okay with where you're at and knowing that, too much further is not going to get you there. And there's other areas to expand and learn.
I also liked what you said about accepting the process, or as I would like to say, learning to enjoy the process.
Yep.
Because the process, it's not really the destination is important, but it's the whole journey that you go through to get to that destination, which is something that a lot of us just kind of rush through because we want to get to that destination. We don't really appreciate going through everything that we go through and giving ourselves grace for going through all that to get to where we ended up.
I know that one takes practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think with our topic, it's not as easy with people who have ADHD or ADD.
Yeah, I'm ready to start linking up some of these themes, to what we're talking about with our gratitude.
All right, let's go. All right, so I'll kick it off. We're going to talk about ADHD and ADD, attention deficit
hyperactive disorder.
Yes, and yes.
Or ADD, attention deficit disorder.
Yes. So remember, as we get into this, it's important. This is something that I thought I had all my life until my psychiatrist is like, do you realize you got ADHD? And I was like, no shit.
Really?
How much did this college degree cost you? I'm just kidding. That was very offensive.
And water's wet. What else you got for me?
Yeah.
Doc?
She was actually pretty good. I liked her.
Right. It was very interesting conversation because, okay, I've got notes. So remember, as we talk about this, there's no one size fits all to ADD. Children have it in a different fashion. Some people grow out of it. Some people develop it later on in lives. A lot of psychiatrists now are saying that a good majority of ADD, ADHD is linked to childhood trauma as well. So I think I'm in that camp to where, and when I reflect back when I was a child, I remember being peaceful and happy at times. And then when my mom tried to commit suicide in front of us, I think that's when it all fell apart. That was my trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. And before we get the cart 2 in front of the horse here, when we were dealing with the audio stuff, I think, Judy, you really kind of did a nice synopsis of the layout of what ADHD is, or like some of the things that we were talking about here.
So there's from what I read, there's 3 different types of ADHD or ADD. The first type is the imagination or imaginative, or the one that daydreams a lot, can't focus. They just kind of wander off. Their brain is very active on other things and can't focus on what's in front of them. The other one is the hyperactive one, where they have the non-focus, but they also have the hyperactivity behind it. And the third one is the combination of the two.
And I was saying, if you go out and take an assessment, these are very common to find. They're large questionnaires that ask about your behaviors. Like, are you able to finish tasks? Do you find yourself daydreaming? They ask to the frequency of these behaviors too. The first part speaks to the focus ability, like you were talking about, the daydream stuff. And then the second part speaks to the hyperactivity items of, being able to fidget and, like, do you feel
being
like,
able to sit still?
Yeah, do you feel like you're having a motor, or, and like, do you, my wife lovingly calls this, like I said, not to pointlessly gender these items, but she's ADHD as well. And so as my son, she calls the first part, the daydream. She's like, yeah, this is girl ADHD, and then the boy stuff is like just the hyperactive item, and it's not the same in everybody, but there are some very common themes, and definitely my son, he is stronger on the hyperactive sides. I'm speaking this, but I am personally undiagnosed, going through working with counselors and talking with other people, and like they run me through it, and they're like, I think you're like undiagnosed ADHD, and I'm like, yeah, no shit.
I wanted to bring up a small point when you talked about the male and the female version.
Yeah.
There was documentation that I also read that female ADHD or ADD is a lot, is more misdiagnosed than male ADHD. That was it.
I don't disagree. We'll talk to certain behaviors here of why that is and how it relates to addiction. But I was just saying, I am not a medical professional, neither of all of us when we go through this. But going through this, when I finally took space to like work with other professionals and talk with people, and especially my wife and my family on this, the toolkits that we have developed out of this, I align very strongly with a lot of these. I'm not here to say I am or I'm not ADHD, but I'm just trying to say the themes resonated so strongly like that the toolkits benefited me greatly. And that's what I want to always open up our listeners to is like, I always speak of modalities, like you don't have to be ADHD. You don't have to be an alcoholic. You don't have to be any of these, but if any of these like resonate with you, feel free to pick up some of the items that we talk about and use them in your life, right? Mm-hmm. Don't worry about the stigma of the names that come with them. So anyway, I digress. Let's talk more about ADHD.
Okay. So that's it. That's the gist of you can read, there's like a 5-page paragraph on exactly what it is, but do you guys want to jump into, do you want to give examples?
Well, one of the examples, actually a couple of them that I had watched from a couple ladies who are on YouTube and had ADHD. And one of them was, she said, this is my life. This is what it's like living with ADHD. And she takes her phone and she walks outside and she looks at her car, and the driver's side door is open, the passenger side door is open, and the trunk is open. Now she's been in her house for 2 hours and just completely spaced, got sidetracked in her house and spaced out her car, and her car's been sitting in her driveway wide open. The other one was a lady who was, she has a channel on YouTube just specifically for ADHD. And she says that she has everything in her kitchen set up so that it's all within 1 or 2 steps of where she's going to need them. Because if she's making coffee and she grabs her cup and she walks over to the kitchen to get creamer, she looks in the fridge, she sees chicken in there that she's got to pull out, and then she realizes she's got to go walk her dog. Next thing you know, she's walking down the street, cup of coffee in her empty cup of coffee cup in her hand while she's walking her dog.
Yep. I mean, the good part of that is, professional chefs use the triangle method where, you center your workflow around yourself,
yes.
Mise en place, you're placing your items. So you're trying to be efficient in your task, but
exactly.
It's interesting to hear an ADHD person like being like, no, this is my containment system.
Yeah. She will completely lose track of what's going on, or her brain gets sidetracked with everything else that is going on around her. And if she walks more than 2 steps away from what she was doing, her brain will turn that off and turn on something over here, and then something over here, and then something over here. And she can have 5 tasks open and going at one time and not finish a one.
Yep. Talking about these behaviors, I want to kind of set the stage here on what kind of this is and how it's approached. It's interesting, and this is very near and dear to my heart about addicts. Dr. Gabor Mate, has written a book specifically on ADHD and these behaviors, and he's also one of the, premier physicians around addiction behaviors as well. Mm-hmm. He notes that like 40% of alcoholics are either diagnosed ADHD people. This is diagnosed. And there's much more that may be undiagnosed. Same with especially drugs. like meth and cocaine,
Heroin.
Yep. These specifically, and he goes on to specifically say, even the pharmacological items used to help correct some of these behaviors, methylphenidate, like these are very, they are very similar to the other drugs that ADHD people get addicted to, because at its core is, either very early in childhood or in the womb, the body has, we have basically discombobulated dopamine regulation. At the core of this, either the inability to focus or the hyperactivity is regulation deficiency. And addiction is an escape from stressors.
Yep.
At its very core, it just manifests itself in very, particular behaviors and certain ways. But there's an important stat that I want to share quickly from the book. This is in the realm of Hungry Ghosts. I reference this quite a lot. This is a very good book by Gabor Mate, but he says people with ADHD are twice as likely as others to fall into substance abuse and nearly 4 times as likely as others to move from alcohol to other psychoactive drugs. People with ADHD are also more likely to smoke, to gamble, and to have any number of addictive behaviors.
Oh, for sure.
And so he talks about this being having the predisposition for addiction, like this motor of wanting to escape stressors is developed very, very early in us. And why it may be hereditary, that gives us the predisposition. It doesn't give us the predetermination, though.
Right. Important factor, what you just said there is, like we talked about on the run this morning, that experts are saying now that ADHD is hereditary and you have a 50% predisposition to, doesn't mean you're always going to get it or exhibit those behaviors, but it's something that definitely gets passed down. So
do you think the reason why, I mean, I pretty much know the answer to this one, but do you think the reason why people...
Man, my hair looks good today. Sorry. It says
He's just sharing examples of ADHD.
Woo boy, right? He just squirreled out there. Okay, so do you think the reason why people go into addictive personalities or get addicted to these chemicals is because nobody has either treated their ADD or taught them tools on how to deal and cope with what they're going with, and so they just naturally go to something chemical?
Yes and yes.
Absolutely, because these are, the dopamine regulation is just, like I said, discombobulated from us very early. And so dealing with these behaviors is so hard to deal with. He talks about it's even worse in the throes of the addiction, because when you're trying to treat people with these behaviors, they may be under the influence of the drugs themselves, and they are reflective of this behavior as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it takes so much time to tease that out and parse that out, because even if you're trying to address the addiction, there are other things with somebody with ADHD, either undiagnosed and is addicted to cocaine or meth, you're gonna have a hard time parsing out the chemical behaviors of the person and what the substance has created as well.
Right. I'm going to chime in and give some examples about me, and then I'll circle back.
I was going to ask you if you could explain the paralysis.
Yes. So my 2 behaviors that I have with the ADHD is they go from both sides of the spectrum pretty drastically, and that is I get the paralysis and I get the hyperfocus, the hypervigilance. So the examples that I put for myself as I was thinking through this is that everything distracts me. So this is what, I always joke, like people are like, John, just chill out, bro. Go with the weight, go with the flow, man. I'm like, I don't know what, I can't. Believe me, I wish I could, because I really enjoy having that peace.
That's not how your brain works, though.
It's not. And so let me go back to the addiction thing real quick. Alcohol had a certain soothing effect for me, because it would allow me, I'd get really drunk and be able to focus on things.
The mute button.
Yeah, but it was, Judy would tell, I would get drunk and then go do projects, and I would do them very well and work till very late in the night until I was just blackout drunk.
2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm going to share something very personal as well, and that was when I got out of the Army. For a couple of years, I was a truck driver. And back in the 90s at truck stops, they still sold what are called cross tops. If you may have heard of those, it's pure ephedrine, not pseudoephedrine. So they stopped selling it because that's the main catalyst of the foundation for making methamphetamine. So like 50 of those tabs would cost $7.99, and I would so certain states were starting to outlaw and ban it. So I remember I'd be like in Arizona, New Mexico, I'd go to truck stops and I would just buy like everything they had. Why? Well, because the first time I tried it, I did it because I was extremely tired. Yeah, this is what truck drivers do. They have to drive a lot, so they get tired. So I took a couple, and it made me really energized. Not like caffeine, but like in a really good way. And then I found myself taking like 5, 7 at a time. And I tell you what, the high that I would get from that, number one, had a crazy amount of energy. But for a person with ADHD, it is such a wild stimulant that I was completely calm and focused. That's so I know I've known all of my life, my adult life, especially, with drugs and alcohol, that if I were to ever even taste a high of methamphetamine or cocaine, that'd be it. It'd be over, because I understand wholeheartedly. When my psychiatrist and I were talking about me getting put on Vyvanse or Adderall or something else, and I told her, I said, this is another medication that'd be put on top of my. So okay, I got a train. Hold on, just bear with me, babe. a ton of thoughts. Having ADD and then plus having anxiety and depression and panic disorder. The ADD thing is sort of it's like everyone walks through life on, volume 1 or 2 with some depression and anxiety or whatever. When you have ADD, it's just fucking crank the volume up to 11. Because,
so it exacerbates.
Oh, 100%, because it's I'm anxious. Let me calm down. Let me relax. But the fucking clown show of thoughts is like, no, what about this? What about this? So now I'm standing in, the Home Depot aisle, like fucking heart is pounding. It's like, you need to take deep breaths and do box breathing and calm down. But the ADD guy inside of me is like, dude, you're gonna fucking pass out. Someone's gonna have to call 911. If you grab onto that, shit's gonna fall down. It's just pure chaos. And then when I'm depressed, there's this noisy component too that's just fucking beating my depression in the face. And it's that ADD monster. Like, stop. So remember, I'm gonna just give a couple examples, and I want to circle back because I did title this episode. It's ADD and how we live with it without medication. So anyway, going back to that, when I had stimulants when I was a truck driver, that's what I think a lot of folks don't understand. Why do you give someone that has attention deficit hyperactivity, why would you give them a stimulant?
It has a reverse effect.
Because it almost has that reverse effect, especially with children. That's what makes, for me it was, and adults. It takes these 10-lane highways that are talking in all these different directions. And because the stimulant does what it does, for me, it just takes them all, and puts them into 2 very, very organized lanes
we cannot
of traffic
regulate
flow.
Our dopamine, so that does a very good,
and it makes you feel good, happy, in control, and calm. So I realized as I was a couple of years into that, I'm like, I was just fucking taking handfuls of this shit, because your body builds up a tolerance too.
Like I said, ADHD at its core is an escape from stressor. So if you're in the flight mode all the time, that's going to be your baseline. Like your body's just going to be like, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I need to look for something else. It's like, you know, the monkey paw wish of never being able to be, you know, I want more money or whatever. And, you know, if you get that wish, you will be granted it, but you will never be sated by enough money.
Right.
Like learning to escape from stressors early, you will never be sated by a state of being. You will always be searching for something else, meaning you will always be in a state of stress.
Yeah. Nice.
So, I mean, that's it at its core.
Yeah. So real quick, I know I was all over the place. That's how my brain works. Let me give my two examples really quick. So the paralysis that I get is just that the ADD paralysis is what's held me back in my professional life for sure. You know, the feedback I've gotten is, John, you got to do better with starting a project and, you know, organizing your projects to completion. It's like, I fucking can't. I can if I put a ton of effort into it.
Yeah,
but
that's the key. It's all that effort and focus, that energy draining focus that you have to put into something to actually complete it.
Draining. I watch colleagues of mine just go through and do projects, and it's like I can't organize myself that way. Number one, because it's boring as shit. So there's the crux of it. If it's boring, I can't. That is a living hell for me. So administrative Excel spreadsheets, fucking the epitome of hell. So when you give me these wild administrative tasks that don't make life sense to me, I get paralyzed with it. I go, I know I need to do 1, 2, and 3, but my brain just keeps jumping between those tasks and I can't get started.
But I bet you, similar to me, I bet you like a high learning curve.
Oh yeah.
Items, like you just immerse yourself at depth to them, like almost compulsively. And then when you get to a certain point, you just like walk away from it for a long time too.
Yep. So that's the guitar playing. It's immerse, get it to where I'm 80% good and then hang it up. Pros and cons to that. You know, Judy used to joke, I've gotten much better. There's going to be a lot of me validating myself with this, but Patrick, I think you can attest to it. We'll do a project extremely well to 90% completion for some fucking reason. It's like, I'm telling you.
I'm dying over here. Why are you killing me?
There's going to be one.
You gotta call me out, bro.
This basement will always have one ceiling panel that's never going to get put on. I don't know why that is. It's like, I got to leave it just unfinished that way. But okay, so I got the paralysis that happens. The other thing is the hyperfocus and the hypervigilance. So another thing with that paralysis is I've caught myself out in my wood shop, Patrick. I was telling Judy about it. This is the wildest thing. I'll be on my bevel saw, miter saw. I'll cut a piece. I will literally need to walk 4 steps over to get a tool. Within that 4-step period, there is I need to fix that. Oh, I meant to do that. And I take a step to the left and I go to touch something. Be halfway going to touch that, I'm like, oh, I meant to go touch that thing too. And so here's how I deal with that. I catch myself doing, I'm a little fucking spastic monkey making 4 steps to go get one tool to go back to the task. And now within that 10-second 4-step period, I have created 20 other things that for some reason need to fucking get done. I need to put that tool away. I'll grab the tool, I will move 12 inches, set it down, and fucking walk completely the other way. So I have to make conscious. Does it sound dramatic? Yes, that is. It's how it is. It's comical sometimes anymore. So that's the distraction portion. To the point where it's paralysis. Judy went on vacation. She gave me a list of things to do some home projects. I'm really good with that usually. But I find myself just sitting in the chair half the time watching movies because I'm like, I don't know how to get started on them. There's super simple shit. Like my brain's like, you got to just go finish that 10-minute task to finish the floor in the guest room. I can't. I can't do it.
I wanted to interject here. Michelle actually asked, what's the difference between multitasking and ADHD/ADD? And Lisa responded with some really good
Yeah, she was on point with the responses.
information. She says some of the hallmarks of ADHD are, you're going to have to read that, babe. I can't say.
Inattention and hyperactivity/impulsivity. Impulsivity is a key one there, and then most often has psychological component. Multitasking is usually internally splitting attention between tasks. Interesting enough, studies have shown that most people cannot successfully multitask. It's actually not good for cognitive processing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and also I wanted to add to that one is that multitasking for people who do multitasking can finish their projects. People with ADD have multiple projects that they just never end up finishing.
And then multitasking is almost a way to hide as well, just being surface level. And I want to speak to this. There's another book, I think Cal Newport wrote it. It's called Deep Work. And this is one of the tools that I use to help combat some of these traits. And it's setting aside specific time to actually move in depth on a subject or a focus. This is the benefits of being on a hyper focus, of being able to, like when you want to get a task done and you have ADHD, and I'm not saying like you're telling yourself you wanted to get it done, but inside that you wanted to get done, you will move mountains to make sure that gets done. You will ignore relationships,
right?
And you will ignore self-care things. You will skip meals, and you will ignore self-care items to get it done. And you can go into beast mode and complete items because of that hyper focus. What I'm talking about is focus time of being able to move at depth, and there is a tax to moving shallowly on stuff. Oh this, oh that. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like you can, by being able to stay at focus, you can begin to iterate in your mind the steps that need to play out. You can focus on the skill level of the task at hand. If you're working with wood, this is moving to flow where there's the subtle techniques of how much pressure you need to apply to it, and minimizing your steps in between the things. And this is kind of the Zen aspect of it, right? So this is that deep focus, and it is a muscle too. Like learning that to train yourself to get to deep focus. If you're used to just going bing, 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 you're not going to be able to say I'm going to sit down for 4 hours and be a wood carving master. These are items that you have to set aside time for to move to deep focus, and this includes eliminating other stimulus, like setting your electronics to the side where you can't reach them, not being interrupted, if you live with for us in a family of ADHD people, learning to set aside and say hey, I need some time to focus on this. If you need to bring something to my attention, I would love to be able to do so at a later time. Right? So blocking out time for focus on tasks is good. I'm not saying you will get that tasks done, but learning to embrace the fact that protecting that time is part of the discipline there to help with that.
Yes.
I wanted to give an example.
Wait, I haven't gone down my
I'm
list. I'm so distracted. You guys have not let me finish my list.
We've squirreled out.
No. Just the one last thing. And so that's the paralysis that I talked about. The hyper focus and hypervigilance. To your point, Patrick, Judy's seen me do that. I do that very well. A technical manual, I can read that. Novels, I try to read. I have to read the first page 30 times over and over because halfway, the retention isn't there. But technical stuff and building things, I get way into that. I don't know. That's my attraction to it. The hypervigilance portion, which is completely opposite of the paralysis, is a good example. And I told you this morning, Patrick, the last movie Judy and I went to go see was Wolverine. Because I have such a deep desire to sit in a movie theater and get immersed in it. But my brain, so the first time I hear someone texting or talking, or this guy, unwrapping his food and fucking crunching popcorn, and my brain immediately goes, no immersion in this movie. We're going to shift all energy to seeking out any noise now that's going on around you. To to the point now where it gets wildly distracting because my other pet peeve is, free range fucking rude people in society. So now it's like 10 minutes into it, Judy's like, let's just go home. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm gonna pull the chute on it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all my stuff. That's my clown show of behaviors.
I wanted to give an example of kind of the daydreaming aspect of it, because I experience this a lot. One example is having a conversation with somebody and not hearing a word, staring right at them, and they're talking to you and not really hearing a word that they're saying. You're focusing on the little piece of lint that's on their shoulder, or you're focusing on how you're standing or how they're standing, or you're focusing on the fly that's flying around the room, or you're focusing, you have focused on everything else that's around because your brain is not focusing on what they're trying to tell you. And this I have trouble with, because my brain does this all the time. I focus on 10,000 other little things that are going on, micro little things that are going on, and forget the conversation.
Their voice becomes the parents from Peanuts at that point.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. And I've had that ever since I was a little girl. I can remember playing soccer, little pee-wee soccer, and the coach is talking to me, and all I could focus on was that his breath smelled like broccoli. And that's the only thing that I remember.
You got broccoli breath.
Instead of everything that he was trying to tell me what to do. I cannot remember anything of what he said. All I know is that his breath smelled like broccoli, and I wanted him to back away. That's the only thing that I remember. So I mean I can zone out at the drop of a hat. So it takes me a lot of focus, a lot of energy to focus on a conversation and retain what is being said to me, instead of just allowing my brain to wander off.
Yeah. Two items that these are very apparent in the dynamic of my family, and there's two items that help us deal with that. To yours, I don't know how many times I'd try and get down and talk with Flynn on his level and go through like this is why we do this, and this is, and he'll just be like, and like looking and the motor's going, and then I get done and he's like, you have a booger hanging in it. I'm like, all right,
Did not hear a word you said.
The point with that one is, or even between me and my wife, like I would be working on something and I just come barging into a room and I'd be like, did you see this and this and this and this and this? And there's this point that we call a transition period, and it works really well with kids. It's like, when we tell them like, hey, soccer practice is at 5:30 tonight, and you tell them that earlier in the day, and then I'm working, maybe running a little late, and I come upstairs at 5:15, and I have to be like, why isn't everybody ready? You should know this, because in my mind I've been so like I have cued that and focused on it.
Yeah.
The point with the kids, and I have to learn to do this with my wife, and my wife has learned to do this with me. Like, if we have something, or like they may not be in the same state of mind that you are. They are not in the same state of focus, and they are not in the same state of obsessive control of the situation. So you have to learn to transition into that, like giving cues, like, and it sucks sometimes because it's got to be like, you got to set yourself up for success. If soccer practice is coming, like, oh, it's 5:00. Hey, Flynn, can you finish what you're working on? Pick one last thing to do. And then, you have to parse it out and then begin to get your clothes on. And then it's, all right, shin guards and socks, and then cleats, and then your water bottle. And then, so it's the repetition of that. He's a kid. He's in soccer for the first time. He's not going to instinctively remember to do that every week. The kid was just, he already forgot what he ate for lunch, right? So It's going to take time. Same thing with me and my wife on stuff, so routine is big for the kids on help. And then, like I said, transition periods if you're not in that. The other thing that helps with the daydream stuff, and I think this is very important, as much as that we want to be task oriented and I got to finish this and I got to do this. And I sit and, I pick up my tools. I'm like, oh, I need to go fix this. I have learned that I've talked about the ability for deep focus and protecting the time. Likewise is just for the time for ideation. When you set aside a time for ideation, because like this is like leaning into a strength of our multitask. If the hyperfocus is one thing and learning how to get to flow is beneficial in a healthy manner, so is the ability to jump from item to item. And this is where I would say like ideation is so wonderful. Like stop trying to live by everybody else's rules and that you have to complete a task. I call it puttering.
Oh, I'm a big putter.
I just love like.
So is Michelle.
There's a point where you're gonna like. It's okay. The job is to like just hang out in the garage and like either tidy up, and you'll think of like, begin to do something for 5 minutes, and it's okay that you're moving from task to task to task, because through that there may be days where I'm strong on the ADHD. I'm like, I gotta start this task, I gotta start this task, and I feel like the end of the day, and I'm like, shit, I just started 15 tasks and they're nowhere near to completion. What that does is like, if you give yourself space for that ideation, you learn to become more efficient on either certain tasks or become, that's a process of learning. And then the other is you get a sense of priority and weight of effort for those. Only until we begin to engage on those activities where we truly understand the amount of effort to complete them, it's okay to start a task and say, I'm not up for completing this. I'm going to set this down knowing that there's other tasks available. So give your time the space to just learn, putter, and fidget around, because I love that about ADHD sometimes, like the fact that you can just be like, this item, this item, this item, this item, but give yourself the space for it. Don't try and like worry about not completing it or whatever, so the more you learn to live with it and deal with those cues and regulations, and this is why, I took issue with the fact that you posted the thumbnail was the no medication item, because my son and my wife are on medication for this, and I think that can be very important. But Gabor Mate directly calls out, at no point will pharmacological solutions alone work, period. You have to develop the toolkits with this. And this is part of it, learning our behaviors, and I talked about this. I am undiagnosed, but learning the toolkits and the cues to it, knowing that I'm like, oh, hey, I'm being hyper focused right now, or hey, I am being, like I feel like I got a motor. So, setting aside spaces for that and knowing that they will come, maybe routine, maybe not, but like for me, learning to run and exercise and then trusting that process at appropriate moments, knowing that, picking your suck, I may not be in the right headspace, but I have to go run for the day. But I've also remembered like, hey, you have these feelings or stuff going on right now. You know what it feels like afterwards if you don't run, right? So, what's going to be worse for you later is if your inability to focus and you're lashing out or like temperamental, or like, do you want to run, kind of work this through, and whatever will come later? Or, do you just need to go out to the garage and putter around? Do you need to ideate? Do you need that deep work time?
I think another thing is not to feel shame or guilt, because this is just speaking for me, and I'm a great putterer. I putter. That's just my day. But I will, when I first started recognizing these things, I would go into the kitchen, I'd start unloading the dishwasher, I will get sidetracked. I will go in to my room and see the pile of laundry and start folding the laundry, I will get sidetracked again. I will walk back into the kitchen, see that the dishwasher is wide open, and immediately get on myself. Why did I just leave? I knew I had to do that. Why couldn't I just finish and do that? And I think that is one of the main things that helps with dealing with these things, is to not feel that shame and guilt that you put on yourself for not completing something.
Yeah.
And not feeling like you're less of a person or you're broken because you cannot work the same way other people work or complete
Yeah,
things
that's
that
important.
other people can complete.
I think
Well, Patrick, I wasn't. If you You got to tell me if I make a thumbnail that you take offense to, so I could adjust it.
I think that was important that you put up because, there's many people who feel very similarly, and I always want to talk about like the modality of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the in between, because I don't want to discourage. I will say when we worked with our, Flynn's primary, I was also like, do I want to put him on this? Because I've also grown up in the generation where I felt like in the 80s, like they were handing ADHD or ADD diagnoses out, and everybody's like, you're on Ritalin, and I knew a lot of people on it, and I had a lot of interaction with that, but it felt like there wasn't any of the other support for developing the items for it. Like it felt like it was, like, all right, you're on this medication now.
They didn't have that hand in hand, that prescription and therapy or other teachings that you can do.
It's like saying like, here's your ephedrine to to focus, right? Yeah, right. This will make you focus better, and of course it will, but it doesn't give them the tools to deal with the underlying cause, which I'm super thankful that Judy brought that up. Was like, when I'm talking about when you're doing the puttering and you open up the dishwasher, there's a part of us that are like, I need to fix this. I need to improve my defensive position. And so you're going, and you're like, all right, I need to go. And then you go to the bedroom and you're like, oh, I need to make the bed. And then the part about the puttering, and this is the part when I'm saying give that space, when you walk back into the kitchen, realize that getting to that other state, you always want to be in, and give yourself the grace. When you look at that open dishwasher, it's like, oh, great. That's another item incomplete, because you know what? Your inside is going to do. And you're like, well, you know what? The laundry room needs attention, or, you're going to find that next task.
Yeah. Or you're going to find that next task that you started that you never finished.
Yeah. So when you come back to that open dishwasher, you say, hey, self, I appreciate you trying to get on that and, make sure that we were taking care of items.
Yeah.
I know.
I understand.
Instead of, oh my gosh, I'm broken, I can't do things like other people can do.
Right.
You know what? Maybe I'll take a few minutes to just wrap this up, and that's okay. And it didn't go perfectly. So this is a part of executive function of ADHD that really resides with, people get scared of completing a project because we will either be judged on it, or it didn't come out how we wanted to, or our defensive position wasn't improved how we wanted to. This is part of that iterative process of puttering that we learn to begin to accept, hey, self, you started it. You didn't complete it. It's all right. But we'll get it to a point where, I'll leave the silverware in there. And if it runs again, guess what? It runs again. It's okay. It's okay.
I've learned to just walk in there and go, whoops, and then just finish the task.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Forgot that.
Thank you, Self, for leaving a lovely reminder of the door being open. Because if I shut it, I wouldn't have remembered.
I would have never remembered.
To the lady about leaving the car door open, thank you, Self, for leaving such an obvious statement that this task is incomplete. It's okay. It is okay. And so when you begin to give yourself that space and that grace, we learn to use our traits of ADD, ADHD to our strength. Stop trying to deprive yourself of these gifts that have been given to you and then hold them in an ill light. Let's learn to strengthen them in a healthy manner, because they're going to be with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I love that. That's very well said. Just to be clear, though, Patrick, there's nothing wrong with medication. I was just trying to paint a picture that us three are examples of folks that have learned, especially with helping each other, to adopt skills to get us through this. But I like how this conversation has turned out, in the sense that I've learned that I got to do better with that and give myself, because there is the what the fuck did you do that for? There's an instant beration that happens. Now, being able to give space and grace for all of that's nice, but circling all the way back to the beginning, where that doesn't happen? In the professional workplace. Because
we are output driven, right?
Yes.
And I could spend a
Product
long
driven,
time speaking about that, of like trying to challenge that in the workspace, because, there's a lot there, and there's a lot of other societal things that reinforce this behavior. There's a reason why these are deep-seated stressors in our culture and our society, and that they appear over and over, and it's increasing over a generational thing. There's going to be people that are going to be like, well, we didn't have the ADHD when we were kids. Well, there's a lot of misdiagnosed, right? But it has also compounded over the advent of technology and ability to split attention and the increased stressors with it. There's a reason why addiction is on the rise on all that stuff, and self-medication is on the rise as well, because we are just learning to grapple with these types of concepts as a society.
Yeah. And when it first came out in the 80s, you were looked at as if you had a disease if you had ADD. So there was a lot of people who didn't come out and say, I've got these issues. They just didn't complete their homework assignments and didn't complete other stuff. And these are really, really smart people, very intelligent people, but they just couldn't focus the way other people could.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of professionals that deal with this, and a lot of celebrity. Stephen King, he's got it real bad. In fact, some of his best books that he wrote, he was drunk and high on cocaine. He had a really bad cocaine addiction.
I mean, I'll go back to the stats that I shared about, being twice as likely for, some other chemical addiction. And like, it's no joke, because, it's a motor that constantly goes. It's underpinning our behavior from the very beginning, right? We're always seeking out. And it's confusing a lot of times growing up, with all that. And you made a good point of like, there's an aspect of sobriety that is very hard to talk about. And one of my coach helped me through this, we looked at addiction to alcohol as some sort of moral deficiency or whatever, but the reality is it's not, and one of the first questions he asked me is like, well, what do you remember about the first time you getting drunk? And, I wanted to answer out of some sort of shame. Does that make sense? Like, I was...
You should feel bad about it.
And he was like, no, there was something else, because that can often reveal what we are self-medicating for, right? He's like, he goes, there's some aspect that felt good and that you kept coming back to it. And that doesn't mean that it's bad, right? Like there just may be no other solution for some of these people seeking this. The point is that it pointed to what we were trying to escape from or trying to learn to process. Right? It made me feel good because I could cut loose and do all these things.
Or I could focus better. Or
I could focus better, so that's why I'm trying to say like pharmacological solutions need to be paired with either counseling and other tools to help work through it. Same with how we deal with alcohol, or any addictive behaviors. There is something there that we're pairing that with or trying to escape from. And alcohol itself is neither good nor bad. It's just a chemical that tends to fuck with us, right?
Yeah.
There are people that can use it without addictive habits forming.
There's no Sarahs out there.
But at the same time, I would challenge to say like, to be a little bit more introspective about it. And when my coach challenged me on that, I was very grateful for that, because, I was able to answer like, yeah, there was a lot of, I feel nostalgic about certain items in my early years about getting drunk. And he was trying to tell me it wasn't the alcohol that you were nostalgic for. It was the fact that you were shedding some expectations and aligning your behavior with what you wanted to do inside, right? Like I was being crazy when I wanted to do this. He's like, it wasn't alcohol liberating you. It was you dropping those expectations, and we just have to learn to do that without alcohol, right?
Interesting.
We could open a whole bunch more stuff on this topic.
Yeah.
It went quickly.
We went over.
Feels like we just started.
I know.
Okay. Well, let's we got to wrap it up.
Well, let's wrap it up.
Okay. Next week.
Next week, we are going to get into the power of addiction.
And the addiction of power.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
I thought you were going to wrap it up.
Done, done diddly done.
Yeah. Man, I feel like we just started to unpack that too.
Well, we can always revisit it too. I mean, it's a very common theme, and like I said, it's hard for a lot of people, and I personally feel that's what drives a lot of self-medicating behaviors and stuff. And it's so hard to diagnose. You know, we only talked about the diagnosed aspects of these behaviors. You know, there's a lot of undiagnosed people that, you know, go out there. And this is access to, you know, the medical structure of our society, and then also what's been ingrained into us culturally at work, being output driven, you know, like, and just general societal stuff like, being an alcoholic means you can't control it, or like you're not man enough to handle your drinks, right? You know, like the inability to self-regulate is a moral deficiency, you know, is the stigma. Mental health is the inability to do X, Y, and Z in a series of lifelong bad decisions. That is the furthest thing from the truth, and we just need to continue to talk about that and cultivate interest around that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa said, good to see y'all. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Lisa, for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Okay, join us next week. We are going to talk about the power of addiction and the addiction of power. It's been fantastic. We're getting into the groove, into the studio.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for watching and tuning in and subscribing. We really, really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed and you're listening on a podcast?
On the podcast,
we really, really would encourage you to log into
youtube.com/@sobermind and hit that subscribe button.
Yes, please.
It helps support us, and we're getting close to 500 subs. They've got some new thresholds. We're going to be able to start selling some Sober Mind merch.
Yay! I'm so excited.
For real, Patrick. So
you got some Sober Mind underwear?
we can make some Sober Mind underwear
Or socks?
Just for you, Patrick.
Okay.
Just for you.
Yeah. For the rest of the day, Judy and I are playing Spider-Man 2, the greatest superhero game of all time. And then Odie, we'll be going back into Baldur's Gate. Lords of the Fallen is the most difficult game I played, and it fucking sucks. For the record,
It's very pretty. I mean, they did a great job.
I told Patrick what I did.
Holy cow!
With Sony,
we couldn't even get past the first boss, and we're not noobs. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. All right. Let's roll the outros. Thank you very much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate your support. Got a lot of comments on some of the shorts that I uploaded, and it's so nice for people to say thank you. This really helped. You know, so I think we've accomplished our mission. We set out to do this whole thing by saying that if we help just one person,
then we've done our job
with the one single idea.
One day at a time, brother.
One day at a time.
Yep.
If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please contact the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. Also, if you need help with addiction recovery for yourself or someone you know, please check out Al-Anon. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself. You are loved.
Bye, y'all.
Take care.